Okay, hello everyone. Give it 1 or 2 more minutes and then we will get into the wild and wonderful world of financial reporting. Everybody's favorite topic. Okay, well, it looks like everybody is pretty well settled in, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Um, Welcome to financial reporting. I'm going to talk briefly a little bit about the current state of things, where to find things in FOLIO, where you can get access to different pieces of information. And then we're going to talk a little bit about kind of how the roadmap is developing. And then in the last third to half of the session, I'd like to get some feedback from you so we have a better understanding about the direction you would like to see us go. Because if I know one thing, there are never enough reports in the system, and there's always a need for additional reports and additional reports and additional granularity, just because there are so many things you got to fill out and they're always changing. And so any feedback you can provide us that will help us to figure out what needs to happen next. Some of this we know, some of this we would really like your feedback. So please do feel free. I'd like this to be a conversation rather than a presentation. So with that, I'm going to start by talking about, as mentioned, the current state of things. And my button is not working. Come on, we can do it. Okay, well, so much for my clicker. I'll do it the old-fashioned. Hey, what is going on here? Okay, so we're going to start by talking about what's in the finance app, because this is really where everything resides. PowerPoint is just misbehaving today. All right, so the very first point of access where you can gain access to things, and this is less for output and more for at a glance overview, is with the fiscal year overview. This is an example of everything you can see, everything you can get to. Obviously, because it's all API driven, you do have the ability as well to use tools to invoke APIs to get access to all of this stuff. But at the very top, we have the fiscal year information, including last time it was edited or last time it was updated. Then we summarize everything. So we've been doing a lot of work on improving the financial summaries over time. Damien's actually been doing the bulk of our financial work with regard to handling the back end of that. We're very grateful to him. Underneath the brief summary, then you have a ledger view. This is important if you have a very complex financial setup because it shows all of the ledgers associated with a given fiscal year. Underneath that, we have groups. Groups are interesting because groups can go across ledgers, across fiscal years, and across a number of other things. We're going to talk about groups for reporting purposes a little bit, but I want to kind of steal away that groups are a really, really useful tool with regard to slicing and dicing your financial information. And that's by design, because really that's how we manage all the statistical stuff. And then at the bottom are all of the funds that are associated with the fiscal year. And this is really very much just to give you an overview of what your fiscal year looks like. The next breakdown would be ledgers. These are a lot more detailed. So again, you have the summary information and the financial overview of what's going on. One thing I do want to highlight here, this is new development, is this thing, I guess it doesn't reflect. Um, Coming in the Ramson's release, we have added the credited line. So we are now separating out the expenditures from the credits. So that is now, starting with Ramson's, that's going to be split off. So you have much more granularity as to what you have put out versus what has been come in, what sort of credit memos you have. And that will help, that should help bring the accounting more in line with established standards. And again, a comprehensive look at all of the data that is contained within a ledger. Once again, we can see all of the groups that are associated with that ledger and all of the funds that are associated with that ledger. Once again, a group can cross multiple ledgers. Within ledgers, we have the ability to export, and this is a very detailed export. It shows all of the funds that are within that that export, as well as any specific types of fund information, including is it a one-time fund, approval fund, gift fund. I didn't have enough room to copy the entire CSV. It would have gotten too small, but this is really going to be your most detailed export view at this time. So the bulk of your exporting will be at the ledger level. We also have the ability here to review rollover logs when you do fiscal year rollover. Again, you probably know about this if you've done fiscal year rollover, but I want to highlight this is also a good way just to keep track of the state of things from year to year. Groups are kind of a cool thing because I've worked with a number of library systems, and there's really need to do all sorts of just different statistical groups, statistical codes, statistical groupings that aren't necessarily hierarchies. So you may want to have some, you may want to separate physical from ease. Some may want to separate rare books from others, but they come from different financial pots. I'm trying to think of other types of groups. You know, a reference collection might be a statistical reporting type, physical or media, like audiovisual versus print, all sorts of stuff like that. But you can basically slice and dice all of these groups, periodicals or serials from monographs. So you can group things however you want, and you can create multiple groups. The cool thing is, there is no limit to the number of groups a fund can belong to. There's no limit. Like, you can have any number of groups that you can slice and dice however you want and get that exact output. So as I've been mentioning, you can associate them with multiple ledgers and fiscal years. You can use them to track expense classes. And this is where all the statistical slicing and dicing is intended. We've got some interesting developments happening with that I think you'll be excited about, and that's in the upcoming development. Funds, again, you've all worked extensively with funds, I'm sure. And again, it's the at a glance. One thing worth mentioning is if you're looking this up in Folio, this is all real time. So as transactions process, this gets updated, so it's not a delayed snapshot. So when you're looking at your funds, it's up to the minute, essentially. Transaction histories, this can get really, really, really granular. So with each fund, you have a complete history of the entire transaction, so you can see exactly what happened at any given time. Most of these are encumbrances, but it shows everything that has happened. And each transaction date, you'll notice, is a link. And when you click on the link, it shows very specific information about that transaction, including any tags, any descriptors, anything else. And I've got some upcoming work that's going to be happening, which is where this is going to become very relevant, which I'm excited to share with you. So as mentioned before, within the budget details, when we're going into the budget, we're adding, again, the separate credited value, and this is at the budget level. So if you get a credit memo, it shows specifically right there. Then with the Lists app, we're adding an additional way to slice and dice. And this exists currently in a limited fashion with the Quiznalia release. It's getting a little bit more granular in the Ramson's release. Within the Lists app right now, it's all contained within the POL. But if you do a POL query, then we can get information from purchase orders and purchase order lines, and that includes some financial information. The great thing is this is Boolean purchase support, purchase order line queries, and these are all output into CSV. I'll be able to pull up a live instance to look at. I don't know how good the data is going to be, but we can look at what the Lists app looks like. So just a very simple query is, I want to know all the transactions where the vendor is going. Just as an example, it's going to show me all of the list. There are 40 records, and this is sample displayed output within FOLIO, but it will also output all of this as a downloadable CSV. So we can see workflow status is open, there's a POL number, what's the receipt status. What we'll notice here, if you get to encumbrance type, what is the estimated value? Here's where we're actually starting to get into the finances, if you can look at the financial values based on that. So you can see, for instance, what you're spending per vendor and things like that. And within the Lists app, you can specify what specific information you want to output. So if you say, vendor code and the vendor code is really irrelevant. Distribution type is irrelevant. What I want to know is, what is the receipt status and what is the estimated value, and however you want to do that. So you can limit it only to the information that you want specifically. So that is the current state of reporting in FOLIO today. Want to look a little bit at what's coming, because we are doing a lot of really fun stuff. So coming up with the Sunflower release is the ability to batch edit budgets. It's not exactly reporting, but there are tools that are in the batch budget editing that will be useful for reporting. But basically what this feature does is, at the beginning of a fiscal year or whenever, you can do bulk allocations, bulk batch edits of just do the whole thing at once rather than having to go in and edit on a fund by fund basis. And there are a couple of ways of doing that. You can either do that within FOLIO, or you can do that in a CSV. And this is where it gets interesting for reporting purposes, because in order to do by CSV, you have to start with a CSV worksheet, and that is downloadable. And we are enabling this by ledger or by group. So this necessarily means that you can download some group information from FOLIO. And I know that's been widely desired, is downloadable group information. Not quite the same level of granularity as the downloadable ledger information, but you still have information to work with. This is really, really ugly because it's a sample CSV, but we can see fiscal year, fund name, fund code, bunch of UUIDs, but it's going to give you the initial allocation and current allocation, along with a bunch of other information. So download this into CSV, open it in Excel, and there you go. It will also have full transaction logs that are downloadable. So in addition to going through and clicking on an individual transaction and seeing what it was, when you do the batch edit, you will be able to download the transaction log of that batch edit. So we're really super excited about that. And then there are a few enhancements that are coming to Lists app. These are basically we're making more fields available to query. Lots more fields are becoming available to query. So this is I think this is a partial view of what is currently available. We are going to trim some of the fields that just don't make a lot of sense. Like, why is that even there? Because there is such thing as information overload. But again, so who it's assigned to, who created it, approval date. I don't know if you need to assign it to user UUID. I don't know if they're useful. But a lot of this information, including foreign currency information and so on and so forth. So that is the state of where reporting is right now and what we have immediately on the horizon. We can take a look at this slide if you like, or are there any questions? Does anyone have any initial feedback or anything? No feedback.
Actually, there's a quick question. I'm awfully busy, and I know you're trimming it. So are you having to select each value you're searching for, or are you saying, I want the POL segment with a value of X, or I would just want all the POLs that have this value in this particular field? So it looks like you were including the actual values as a separate item in the list.
It's partially what you're looking for. So I did a very, very, very generic search. So I'm going to log into a development environment, and so pulling up the lists app so we can see. We have no lists in this. Awesome. So within the lists app, and Kathleen, if you have any additional information, do please feel free to speak up. So I'm going to do a WOLFcon. So you have to have a list name. You can put a description if you want or not. The next thing you have to do is select a record type. And for reporting, you're generally going to want to use purchase order lines. You may have a use for organizations, but generally it's going to want to be, you're going to want to use purchase order lines because this is the field that currently deals with any transactional information. Visibility, shared or private. I'm going to do shared for this example. But this is basically, is this visible to everybody or is this visible only to you? And then status active or inactive. You generally, if you're actively working with it, you want to keep the status of active. Then we'll pull up our Handy Query Builder. And since we've already specified that the record type is purchase order lines, we can now select what field or fields we want to use. So we could do exchange rate, currency, and then we have equals, not equal to, starts with, contains, or is not assigned if we wanted to do. So if we wanted to do equals euro, or oh no, the exchange rate would be, we don't want, because otherwise it would be currency. So we're going to skip, sorry, I'm making this up as I go. And then the exchange rate, approval date, approved, bill to. Shit, this is. Yeah, okay, we'll do the date ordered. And we'll do date orders is less than or equal to yesterday. And we can add an additional scroll down to POL, acquisition method, automatic export cancellation restriction, cost currency, cost discount, discount type. We have a lot of cost information that you can track. So we could do PO line estimated discount price, and we can do is, for instance, greater than $5. See if there's actually anything in there. Test the query, and there are 10 results. I can show the results, or I can show which columns. There are certains that are assigned by default, so I want to get rid of the assigned to user. That doesn't really matter, but I can keep the workflow. I can, like I said, lots and lots and lots and lots of fields here. This is a development environment, so let's trim that down a little bit. Run the query and save. Then we can view the list. And now we have a list of everything that costs more than $5, which we can then export the list as a CSV. And then with the CSV export, then you can do whatever transformations that you want. But that is a brief overview of how Lists app in its current/forthcoming state can help with the financial reporting. This is particularly useful if you want to look at more detail on a vendor, or if you want to look at transactions that happened within a specific date range. Yes.
I think one of the other interesting things about this, that, you know, as opposed to finance application, is that we can look at pending order values here, whereas because pending orders don't have transactions yet, they're not really visible. So if you have in the finance application itself, so if you want to do reporting on the value of orders you have pending before set fund, or, you know, that type of stuff, understanding how many pending orders and the value of those pending orders is kind of interesting use case for this as well.
Does this have to fix the problem where orders that didn't really via the data report don't include the fund or the CSD file? And I think that's slated for CSD for Sunflower. But does this fix that? Is this still the way you get at that information?
Trying to think of this that I know that
I can go try that right.
Yeah,
But
try, but it's the same data, so I don't know that we would address that. Because you're getting
because the fund's there, it's just
yeah.
There are a lot of UUIDs in here.
Very good. And if anybody has any questions about the list app, we're going to be able to answer them. Plan to save the queries to the product.
Excuse me.
That's it. Yeah. Is it planned to save the queries to the dashboard? Save list app queries to the dashboard?
We are evaluating the best way to approach that. It's definitely been conversations that we've definitely had conversations to that end. There are certain technical obstacles that we need to overcome, but we are actively looking at ways to overcome that because we recognize the importance of making this easily accessible. So stay tuned, but we've had a number of meetings with different POs and different architects about how we can make this happen. So stay tuned.
Yeah, did you see a feature in Jira for that? Because there is a feature in Jira. Yeah.
Here, the list app is used in a consortium context, so it will. Because I see the consortium manager app on the background.
So right now, This is in a development consortia environment, but the query is being run within one tenant of the consortium. So right now, the initial pass is this is really only in one given member library. So future development will potentially involve other consortial queries. There are a lot of things that need to be discussed and evaluated, and probably some configuration happening, because when you're dealing particularly with finances in a consortial environment, you're also running into data privacy and similar considerations. So right now, it's restricted to a single tenant where I'm authorized to access it, and they know that I can access this safely. But with regard to the data privacy, data security, we're still doing the evaluation specifically for order information. There are plans to do certain types of data at the consortial level within the lists app. So particularly with regard to inventory, that I think is going to be one of the first areas where the focus is to manage all that. But obviously, when you get into inventory, you get into certain order information, but it might just be something as simple as, does another member already have this on order? But yeah, there's a lot of nuance there, but we are looking at lists in consortia and figuring out. We're working on that, figuring that, but initially, it's on the other hand, lists app will be in the consortia enabled, or it's ready for the consortia enabled, at least on a number by number basis.
So what about combine different fields in one query, for instance, inventory and loan?
Kathleen, you might be able to speak to that a little bit better about joins.
Yeah, what were the two?
Inventory and loans, for instance.
So in the currently released version of lists, we have some limited sort of built-in joins. In the Ramson's release that we are wrapping up development for right now, we're building the infrastructure behind the scenes to allow more joins, different types of that. And so while we'll have some of that infrastructure in place, and Sunflower is a way to allow users access to join more of that sort of on the fly. So each subsequent release, you'll have a little bit more flexibility working towards eventually being able to join exactly what it is that you'd like to.
This is really cool development. Unfortunately, it takes time because people have to do the work, but it's been fun watching this come along, just being able to get additional output and more granular Boolean reporting. So I guess what I would put to you is, what would you like to see more of? What would you like to see improved? What thoughts do you have on what direction we should go with this? Because as you've seen, we are working on a lists app that will allow for greater granularity and slicing and dicing. We've also got the existing financial reporting, which is just straight budget outputs and so forth. And what's useful to you? Yes.
Asking myself, well, let me draw a line. I mean, I think it's wonderful to hear that the business app will allow more joins in the future, so the functionality enhanced. Where do we draw the line to the real reporting functionality like LVP or LVP or SQL? Is it more or less the same or a lighter version?
I think at best it's a lighter version. So when we're talking about the lists app and the FOLIO query, it's really just about being able to look at the data. So correct me if I'm wrong, Kathleen, but I think from our perspective, we're interested in simply giving you access to specific pieces of data but we're not interested in transformations, and we're not interested in kind of that, over time periodic capture so you can identify trends and all of that. That kind of thing is out of scope. What we're really interested in with the lists app is what is the current state of things for this specific thing right now. So it's a complement to tools like LDP and Panorama. So yeah, it's a complement to tools like that, or if you have your own tools that you want to use. But we also want to give you the ability to access this data without having to use backend APIs or SQL queries. You should be able to get in there and grab a spreadsheet and do what you need. Because sometimes you just want a quick at a glance. I want to see everything that's pending, and I want to know approximately what it's going to cost. And you can do that right now because they've shown what we've got is workflow status is pending. What is the PO line estimated price? We've got this other stuff we care about. You can download that and get some pretty good information about where it is you want to go when you're coming to, for instance, at end of year spending, you have the pending PO lines. Do we cancel them or do we activate them based on our budgets? That's really what this tool is for, is that just getting quick access to that.
Will it eventually be a way to include the amount you actually paid for this? So that's getting into another module. And so, but that's our use.
Yeah, I think down the road we're going to add invoices to this, are we not?
I believe eventually, yes.
So the actual payment, plus the invoice.
Yeah. And of course, there's also, I haven't talked about what's in the invoices. You do have the history of all the vouchers, but Lists app will eventually support all data types, I believe, including invoices. I just don't want to say when because I don't know.
And is there a maximum output on this? Is it 100,000 or something?
100,000?
Currently, it's set to 1.25 million.
Okay.
But it is a configurable number. So it is.
Please go higher or lower. Or is that the maximum?
That's the maximum currently, okay. But unless that's the default maximum.
Yeah, it can go higher. It just becomes a question of resourcing because.
No, it makes complete sense.
So, scroll a little bit. Are there any discussions on emailing orders directly to vendors once they are placed in FOLIO? Short answer is that is on the roadmap. Actually, a group from Leipzig is going to be taking on that work beginning early in 2025. I don't know when it's been going. I don't know when their target release is, but I know they are about to get started on that. And we're working very closely with them. And I'm really excited about that collaboration. But yes, I can confirm that email order integration is on the near-term horizon. Can list results be bulk edited? Yes, Kathleen?
Not currently, but that is an integration that we are looking at in the future, is being able to connect the list app to bulk edit. And then depending on if it's a supported record type by bulk edit, you can export a list of IDs that you can then import into bulk edit. So there is some limited functionality currently.
Lisa, did you hear Kathleen's answer? That they're working on bulk right now. If you export and then re-import, there's limited. Okay, great, you heard. Can you search add vendor sub accounts to the results?
Yeah, this is an interesting question because the vendor, like the sub accounts will be stored in the organization record, not actually in the POL. But if you're going, are you getting information from?
There is some organization information in here,
Yeah,
so I would have to.
yeah, probably not sub account, but it'd be possible if you're getting like code and name and code and other things that aren't actually stored in the POL, but they appear in the list here. Like vendor organization name is there, so. Yeah, that just in response to Kristen's question.
Yeah, we'll have to look into that. Maybe, because if let me move this out of the way.
Or actually the account would be in the POL. Yeah, yeah. Or might already be there.
President PO.
So
There might be, no idea.
POL acquisition alert, automatic cancellation claiming interval claims, tribute cost currency. Because it's the POL level, right?
Yeah.
Detail, POL donor, e-resource, addition, fund distribution, its collection, its package, location, order format, payment status, physical creative, POL description, publisher, receiver. When I said lots and lots and lots, I wasn't kidding.
There it is, vendor detail, vendor account.
And that's one of the reasons we're gonna be cleaning this up a little bit, is because the list is a little bit ridiculous. We're trying to control it. There's also a search bar that we're adding so that you can search for fields.
But getting this real-time feedback is great.
I have a question, sorry. Maybe I should save the question for some of the time, but are all of the search fields supported in this column list view? Like, because you can choose what you want to display in the table, right? Is it the same list fields?
Not currently. So there are some fields that we display data for,
Mhm.
but that you cannot get query on.
Mhm.
But we are, some of them are data types that we didn't have support for, as of the Brazilian release. But we do have support for ransoms. So we're trying to get it closer to matching with the fields you can query on versus the fields that you can view information.
Should we discuss the fields on one of the next 6 meetings?
Sounds like a topic, maybe not.
And it seems a lot of fields. I'm probably delete them.
My interest has been in disambiguating materials with a publication date in the following fiscal year. So in the past, we were able to encumber against 2 fiscal years. We could have 2 fiscal years open. And I didn't notice POL publication up there, but right now I run I run 2 queries. I run the financial query, and then I run the query of things published in the following fiscal year. I subtract that from my encumbrances.
So it's actually a 2-part response. So in the future, when we get the joins together, you would be able to do that directly within the lists app. So because you'd be looking at essentially instance information and order information. But we do have a feature not yet scheduled, but we're looking for an opportunity to fit it in the near term, where you can actually encumber and pay against upcoming fiscal years as well. But it's really a question. For us, it's a question of bandwidth, because we have a lot of stuff that we'd like to do right now, and we can't do everything we want to do right now. But we do have a feature for that, and that is something that I'm going to try to get in sometime, hopefully around the Trillium umbrella leaf period, but please don't hold me to that. But it's currently penciled in for that time frame. Yes, that's on our menu. So I think the combination of the two will take care of what you need with that. There's another question in chat on whether there are discussions on incorporating patron-driven orders directly to FOLIO. It's actually more relevant. We're going to have a workflow automation conversation happening, I believe, tomorrow.
Yeah.
And one of the automations that we are currently exploring, it's going to happen in one form or another, but we're exploring is really more relevant to like purchase requests or external selection list imports. But we think we can do it generically enough where basically there's a mechanism that allows for the collection of requesters who don't use FOLIO or patron individual requests or other outside people coming in and saying, hey, would you acquire this for us, please? Some sort of mechanism for that. And then a way for libraries to evaluate and make the purchase decision. It's very ephemeral right now, but that we're talking about doing something like that. And I imagine that particular type of interface could play very nicely with a formal patron-driven acquisition type of system. So I don't know if that directly answers your question, but I think that is something that is we're looking at the infrastructure that could make that happen. Is there a plan to export transactions within the finance app at the fund level with the source information and identifier? So, Kimberly, basically you want to go into a fund and export all transactions into a CSV? Is that what I'm understanding? Is there a plan? I'll say there can be. Yeah, I mean, if that's one of the reasons that, I wanted to get some feedback is, this is something that would, if this is something that's you would definitely find useful. It's something we can get into the backlog. No worries. We're glad to hear from you from South Africa. Any other questions? Any other feedback? Any other? In my wildest dreams, I would really like to have this. I know there's a wish for group information export. We've got a request for fund transaction to export. I know we really want everything export. Any chance the title could be included in the transactions?
I think there might actually be a feature for that in Jira already.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's potentially a feature. Yeah. There's potentially a feature for that in Jira already. So we'll look into that. And
yeah, it may be worded as invoice, like if there's some question between if you're talking about like the payment transaction or the encumbrance, you might be looking at, if it's a payment transaction, it's the description of the invoice line. So a question might be, would it need to be, or should it be the actual instance title reference? And thus, like, if you change the title at some point, it would also change. Or like a static title reference, meaning at some point the instance will, you change the instance direction or you updated the instance title to include some of the characters that it would not actually update. Like a static title or the current title. would you be expecting to see
And
there?
would you be getting title from instance or title from order?
Yeah, so if it was an encumbrance, it would come from the order, which is static unless you change the instance connection. And if it was coming from the invoice, it would be coming from the actual description field of the invoice. That is also static. Rather than the actual instance itself, which would possibly change over time.
And the feedback I'm getting is
Something selected.
instance would be ideal, but anything you could give us would be great.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, but that's helpful to know. Yeah. Okay, I don't know how late this session is supposed to go. We scheduled for 50 minutes, an hour.
I believe it's 15 minutes, yeah.
Okay, well, we are right at 11:50, I believe. So are there any last second questions? Otherwise, yes.
It's kind of like the title. I have questions about like how much money have we spent this year on course research. So I feel like that might be another joining inventory,
Yeah,
looking at applications, but it's
Or you could create a group for course reserves. Yeah.
I
Okay.
I'm not a law library, so we're very bare bones.
No, I get it. You might be able to, I mean, if you have like, I feel like there are places like notes fields or something in the POL that if you say it's for course reserves, I think that's even queryable in the lists app. So you might be able to get away with something as simple as that.
Yeah, we do put them in the notes.
What are the note fields queryable lists?
They're not queryable, but we do return them. We're looking at adding the ability to query them in Sunflower and Trillium.
Okay. So if you return them, you can at least do a search on them and then filter down within Excel. So yeah, I think there are things you can do to get there with what we've got, and then we can work on refining that. Okay, well, thank you all very much for coming. Have a great rest of the day and take care. Thank you so much.